The only thing that's left is Arnold's bullshit.
Alright.
That's why I'm up here, Arnold. See? I'm not wearing boots.
Pumping Iron may have given the impression the filmmakers had open access to the bodybuilders, but as Charles Gaines explained, he and Butler didn't exactly waltz into the bodybuilding community and immediately take charge. Like self-described anthropologists, Butler and Gaines were bodybuilding's Lewis and Clark, exploring then uncharted waters. The pair were initially kept at careful arm's length, treated with skepticism, and forced to watch their step in order to maintain the good graces of the athletes. The topic of PEDs, which was slowly entering public consciousness, was an especially close-guarded and mostly taboo subject, even among long-time fellow gym rats. As Danny Padilla once put it, it was like a plumbers or electrical union. No one really talked about it. Nobody really knew what anybody else was doing. It was like this big secret. Writing the book prior to the film, Gaines encountered the same initial wall of denial. What haunted bodybuilders most about steroid use was they just didn't like using them. Partly because it lays them and the sport open to the use one, use them all criticism, insinuated by people that bodybuilding is rife with junkies. But mostly they don't like using them because they sense that, in an oblique way, it gives weight to one of the most abhorred to all of the many public discomforts about them. That all those muscles somehow came out of a bottle. That there's something synthetic, unhealthy, useless, and faintly sinful as plastic flowers about what they do and the way they look. It's as though all the discipline, sacrifice, and work of their training counted for nothing and could be reduced to something the size of a pill. Even though Zane, Arnold and Franco ruled bodybuilding from 1970 to 1981, disclosure of their secret chemical helpers would have similarly wounded their pride, diminished the purity of their image, and dampened their commercial appeal to a public lacking the knowledge, experience and nuance of these drugs. Merely 7 years following SIBA's introduction of Dianabol, the Olympia made its first appearance during an auspicious period in the now exploding Wild West steroid scene. The 60s and 70s were characterized by a haphazard and unregulated use of performance-enhancing substances, and the Iron Men of the 70s quickly surpassed their predecessors in terms of size and definition. The contrast between previous generations who were either bulky and smooth, or small but shredded, was further delineated. Arnold, newly arrived from Europe, soon set a new standard for the sport by being both. As Gaines put it plainly, it was something they all had to do. They didn't love the idea, but you could be as gifted as Arnold genetically, and you could work as hard as Arnold did. But without steroids, you were never going to beat Arnold. The initial trickle of drugs entering sports outside bodybuilding became a raging torrent, indispensable to every athlete's arsenal. Motivated by aspirations to become bigger, faster, stronger, the allure of intertwined fame and fortune, and the systematic support of sporting bodies, PED use became ubiquitous across all areas of sports. The Promethean Ziegler may have initially brought steroids to the competitive few, but it was no longer his quaint and antiquated regimens of a shot of testosterone and 10 milligrams of Dianabol 6 weeks before a competition. Anti-inflammatories, painkillers, amphetamines, barbiturates, muscle relaxants, antidepressants, hashish, marijuana, and antibiotics were added to athletes' pharmaceutical grab bags to aid in their quests. Many of these substances were physically and psychologically addictive. Success fueled excess, and in the small world of bodybuilding, the psyche shifted towards a mindset of bigger is better, more at all costs, and consequences be damned. The Golden Era philosophically set the stage for the struggle for bodybuilding's direction. A good deal of muscle building and nutritional innovation was jettisoned by the wayside when drugs eclipsed the sport's natural underpinnings. While bodybuilding originally embodied an artistic ideal of balance, health and vitality, physical culture became growingly disconnected from these precepts and developed a reputation synonymous with drug use. However, the new breed showed disinterest in the health benefits of working out. Aesthetics, size, definition, and vascularity became the overruling motivations. There were vestiges of the old-school philosophy still opposed to drug use. Joe Gold, Vince Gironda, Iron Man's Perry Radar, and many from the original Muscle Beach scene who still believe the body was a temple and not a tomb dedicated to protracted chemical abuse. Gironda's harsh methods drove Arnold and others to Gold's Gym, where the atmosphere was notably different. Gold's was a place where bodybuilders trained together, joked around, and reportedly obtained the steroids banned at Vince's gym. Gold's was more like Arnold's own gym in Munich, a place for hard work, a jovial atmosphere, and where the steroids flowed freely. Yet Arnold always downplayed the role of PEDs in his success, glossing over the issue in media interviews with the same rehearsed sound bites. "I took them under a doctor's supervision once a year, 6 or 8 weeks before competition," he told Playboy magazine in 1988, adding that he began taking them on arriving in the US at age 21 because all you want to do is be a champion and you take what everyone else is taking. Appearing on the Today Show, Butler and Gaines, who were playing Pygmalion to the lumbering fish-out-of-water Schwarzenegger, were at first chided by host Barbara Walters for Arnold's presence. "We sat down and she was immediately hostile to Arnold. The first question she asked was, 'Do you take steroids?' She expected him to say no, but instead Arnold eloquently explained that to be a champion, one couldn't rely on steroids, but that yes, he did take them. 'I take steroids because they help me an extra 5%. Women take the pill. They are somewhat similar. I do it under doctor's supervision. Steroids are mild and I don't know any intelligent bodybuilder hurt by them.'" Before the spectre of steroids loomed over his public image and aspiring political career, Schwarzenegger published the booklet Arnold Developing a Mr. Universe Physique in 1977, writing, "I will not speak for my colleagues, but yes, I have used them, but no, they don't make me what I am. Anabolic steroids were helpful to me in maintaining muscle size while on a strict diet in preparation for a contest. I did not use them for muscle growth, but rather for muscle maintenance when cutting up." Considering how in Pumping Iron he was incredibly downsized at the beginning and basically grew into the show, they most definitely aided him in gaining size while losing body fat. Arnold's teenage evolution clearly shows steroids' growth-enhancing effects. No one's disputing his dedication and work ethic, but his disavowal of PEDs in his formative transformation is laughable. David Letterman once asked Arnold on air, "If you had to do it again, would you use steroids?" To which he replied, "No. The name says bodybuilding, you know. This means you build your body and your health, and you want to stay away from any kind of drugs. And I always tell people on seminars, you must create the body without the steroids. No matter what it is, if it's acting or anything else, drugs are temporary." When asked whether he could have achieved the same results without the steroids, Arnold replied, "Absolutely. Oh yeah. It would take maybe an extra half year or a year, but it's such a small percentage you get. And then when you stop taking steroids, your body soon goes back to normal. It's really just a temporary thing and doesn't pay off in the end." Arnold completely bypassed the issue of steroids in his first memoir, Education of a Bodybuilder. Likewise, his Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding is a ghost-written farce, and a testament to Arnold's increasingly politically correct bullshit and image management with gems like this. "The use of various anabolic drugs has long been contrary to the rules of the IFBB, which has committed itself to following Olympic doping rules to the letter as of 1999. The IFBB has confirmed that they plan to implement the same drug testing procedures for the professionals that they have established for amateurs, perhaps as early as the year 2000. Personally speaking, I have been trying for more than 10 years to convince the IFBB to use the latest state-of-the-art technology to test both amateurs and professionals. I believe that in the end, drug testing will not only save bodybuilding, but lives as well. I simply hope that my dream and my wish will come true before it's too late for the sport that I have loved for so many years." This nonsensical charade continues in his updated biographical work Total Recall, with Arnold retroactively devoting minimal coverage to the PED topic, interlaced with his usual heavy editorial disclaimers and caveats. "Steroids made me hungrier and thirstier and helped me gain weight, though it was mostly water weight, which was not ideal because it interfered with definition. I learned to use the drugs in the final 6 or 8 weeks leading up to major competition. They could help you win, but the advantage they gave was about the same as having a good suntan."
Come on, don't bullshit me. Bullshit. 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 Bullshit.
Sure, Arnold, considering the biggest side effects of PEDs in your case seems to be faulty memory, inconsistency in stories, over-exaggeration and termination of the truth, maybe you should have called that biographical work of fiction True Lies. On the other hand, any author or media outlet attempting to cover Arnold's steroid use in print faced the full wrath of his legal strongarm. Longtime publicist and fellow Austrian Charlotte Parker, aka the most loathed woman in Hollywood, ensured tight control of any Arnold-related media coverage. As he became the world's #1 box office star, this task became considerably easier. The reason Arnold gets his way with journalists isn't a mystery. They need him more than he needs them. Arnold sells magazines. Arnold attracts viewers. Rick Drayson provided one of the first credible conduits for first-hand knowledge of the steroid narrative of that era through his YouTube channel. In his scandalously candid article titled Training with Arnold, Drayson was one of the first to offer some credible insights. Back in those days, everyone competing was on something. Winstrol worked well for me, gave my skin a shine and really cut me up. Then of course the original Dianabol and Deca worked wonders together. Arnold and Franco would bring their supply from Europe. They had the best. Primobolan and Dianabol was what they used at the time. I got all that I needed from them. Franco would give me the shot as it was preloaded needle about 3 inches long. Shit, it scared the hell out of me. But the results I got from their stuff was awesome. I blew up and got really hard on it. I don't know what Arnold took other than D-Bol, Deca, Primo, Test and Cytomel for cutting up. He didn't take all those at once but throughout the year. It's also not public knowledge that Arnold had calf implants, but all of us at the gym knew it as one year he had no calves, and then that summer after a trip to Europe, he came back with them. Schwarzenegger's fellow gym rats concur, saying that he consumed far more drugs over a longer period than he ever acknowledged. According to early training partner Helmut Riedmeier, Arnold used to inject himself with steroids and took them for breakfast, lunch and dinner quite openly. Arnold claimed he started using PEDs when he arrived in the US in 1968 at age 21, which is patently ridiculous. It's well established that his early mentor, Kurt Marnell, introduced Arnold to steroids as a teenager, with Marnell stating, "People were taking crazy amounts. They didn't care what it did to them as long as they built up. Their hearts could explode. That's why I made sure my boys were careful. I made sure they took only low doses. Arnold never took anything without my supervision. He was smart about it. All my boys were." But this is at odds with other reports. German bodybuilder Ronald Matz explained the psychology of the time. Bodybuilders still think that if one anabolic steroid is good, then 2 or 3 are even better. Dianabol was passed around Munich gyms like Rolaids and consumed like candy. And with Arnold's ever-expanding frame in his early years, he certainly showed zero signs of any off-cycle temperance. Early Arnold biographer Wendy Lee quotes an Arnold contemporary. "Arnold took steroids in doses that terrified the other bodybuilders. I saw him swallow 8 or 9 Dianabols at a time. Then he would take a gulp of milk, a handful of protein tablets, and while he was still swallowing and could hardly talk, he would say, 'Right, now I'm ready,' and start training." According to Rick Wayne, steroids were still a part of Arnold's life in 1966, when he offered Wayne a month's supply of Dianabol. Wayne also says Arnold confided to him that he had been taking steroids since his early teens. In a telling conversation between the pair, Arnold laid bare not only his psychology, but also the extent he was willing to sell his soul for future fame and success. Wayne states, "When Arnold was a young bodybuilder, he once asked me if any man can achieve whatever he wants. And I told him, every guy has his limits. And Arnold replied, 'You're wrong, Rick. Any man can get what he desires, provided he's willing to pay whatever price.'" From Arnold's own admission, health had very little to do with his own personal Weltanschauung. In an interview with WE magazine, he candidly stated, "I'm not training just to be healthy. 95% of the people training with weights are into this health thing, and it's a different mentality entirely. As far as I'm concerned, it's bullshit. Otherwise, I wouldn't drink. I make my protein drink with whiskey. I get stoned. I do my own thing. Grass and hash. No hard drugs. But the point is that I do what I feel like doing. I'm not on a health kick. I know I should take vitamins, for example, but I forget half the time. I can't be bothered carrying around a lot of little bottles." The pageantry of bodybuilding was at its core a bottom-line enterprise. First and foremost, Weider needed a champion with a great body and transcendent magnetism to move his muscle merchandise. On arriving in the US, Arnold was initially overshadowed by the two reigning kings of bodybuilding, both representing opposite ends of the spectrum. Sergio Oliva, brutally big, but lacked the refinement of definition, charisma, and the ideal blend of melanin that Weider sought for the cover men of his magazines. Sergio never revealed too much about his drug use beyond this recorded quote. "Arnold wanted to beat me and he knew he couldn't do it without drugs. I don't blame him, we all did. And it wasn't the little amount that Arnold said. We took it all year long. It gave me tremendous growth, but it's no good. I'm having health effects. I used Deca and Dianabol, and that was something really big at the time. And Deca wasn't considered that bad." Arnold, ever adaptive, quickly learned to mitigate his off-season bloat with better nutrition and sophisticated dosing, compared to the counterproductive blasting he had used as European champion. Lengthy periods off drugs were integrated less as a health measure and more as a means to readily connect with potential acting roles. Frank Zane, on the other hand, smaller and carved out of granite, was more appealing to the mainstream, but he lacked the charisma on steroids that Arnold effortlessly exuded. Zane, a high school teacher by day and pharmaceutical wizard by night, was branded the chemist for his logical and precision-based scientific approach. The intellectual Zane was renowned for his transformation wizardry in the final weeks of a contest prep, when he would literally metamorphise in a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. Zane states, "In my day, there wasn't really much around. There were oral steroids like Dianabol and Anavar. Then there were injectable steroids like Primobolan, Deca, or even straight testosterone." It's a strange missive from Frank, considering the majority of steroids ever manufactured were available during Frank's competitive heyday, from at least 2 doctors connected with bodybuilding from that era. According to Jerry Brainham, Frank apparently loved his thyroid drugs to achieve that next level conditioning. The reticent Zane nevertheless laid out a revealing cycle in a cryptic poem included in his book Mind, Body and Spirit. Quoting part of the poem, "Remembering back, we dream a 1970s familiar theme, where only 2 characters actors deemed. Diana Ball and Louis, Prima Ball on TV, both of whom worked as a team, known for miles around as the best bowlers in town. Primo drove 100 miles a week, combining 15 milligramola bars daily from Diana, not worried about getting fat. You cannot not on that in those days. But that was then, this is now, a growing cast of actors shove, share center stage, all playing the same part at the same time. I awoke amazed, wondering how this ridiculous play isn't dying by now." It's obvious that Frank's referring to the PED scene of the 70s, the commonly used Primobolan at 100 milligrams and 15 milligrams of Dianabol. TV may refer to Testaviron, but Zane is clearly critical of the growing cast of actors, indicative of the range and amounts used by modern-day bodybuilders. I detailed the motivations as to why Weider ignored and capitalized on bodybuilders' drug use in part 1 of the series. Weider claimed steroids accounted for at most 10% of Arnold's physique, and flippantly highlighted Arnold's will to win as his natural inclination for any drug taking. A perk for being in the Weider fold was connections to his steroid-friendly doctors that Weider facilitated. The strong and silent Sardinian Franco Colombo played the perfect foil to Arnold's extroverted alpha audacity. Inseparable birds of a feather, both shared the same apartment, the same women, and the same hypocritically deceptive philosophy of less than honest PED use. In his complete book of bodybuilding, Franco mentions that, "I became a Mr. Universe winner before I knew that steroid drugs existed. Bullshit. I'm amazed at what people will do to their bodies in order to look better." When Arnold was making a run for governor, Franco was interviewed on Fox and Friends, in which he was asked if he and Arnold had ever used steroids. Franco replied, "In the 70s, I asked Arnold, 'What are these steroids that people keep talking about?' Arnold got angry at me and said, 'Forget about that, let's just go to the gym and train.' As time went on, I'm sure that Arnold may have tried a little bit here and there." So Franco claims that the topic of steroids didn't arise until about 8 to 10 years into their friendship. It's something so ridiculous that it stretches the limits of gullibility, even for the most unsuspecting and naive. In his complete book of bodybuilding, Franco doubles down on his bullshit. The physician's desk reference clearly states that anabolic steroids do not enhance athletic ability. I firmly believe that drug taking among athletes should be outlawed in every type of competition. And while we're talking about competitive bodybuilders, remember that several have died as a consequence of taking steroids. I hope you choose not to contaminate your mind and body with drugs and negativity. There isn't a drug on earth that I can recommend for building muscle, not even these steroids you've probably read about. Another possible reason for Franco's dismissal and disavowal of PEDs was his entering the medical field as a chiropractor, and towing the established line meant a level of resigned conformity. But the blatant lies are still laughable, even minus the hindsight of time. In Winning Bodybuilding, Franco writes that steroids didn't work and only exert a placebo effect. In his book Coming On Strong, Franco finally cops to trying steroids, but mentions briefly that he only tried Dianabol once, but he said it loses its effectiveness after 8 weeks. He also plainly states that he didn't think that steroids were necessary to become a champion. Now this is coming from the guy that was one of the strongest men of the era, with strength feats still impressive by today's standards. Off the record, Franco was rumoured to claim that he took more drugs to win the 81 Olympia than he ever took for his entire career. And he had the gyno to show for it. This surreal hypocrisy is at Liver King levels of absurd. As time marches on, some of the more peripheral players in Pumping Iron have candidly spoken about their PED use, as they wax nostalgic on the setting sun of their remaining years. When it comes to Mike Katz and Lou Ferrigno, I couldn't find out much about either guy's PED use, but logic dictates it would have been similar to what their contemporaries were doing in that era. After Pumping Iron, Mike Katz romanticised the need to compete drug-free at the 1980 World Pro Championships and the 81 Olympia. Weighing 20 pounds less than his 70s competition weight, Katz achieved 15th place, citing this result as his best condition and biggest accomplishment. He became a proponent of natural bodybuilding and became involved with Chet Yorton's Natural Federation. Promoter and trainer Dan Lurie first met the 16-year-old Lou Ferrigno in 1967, quickly recognising the kid from Brooklyn's bodybuilding potential. At 6'5", Louie only weighed 165 pounds. But through Dan's guidance, Lou quickly became a giant among men. Advising Lou to stay away from steroids, Dan said Lou's father Matty wanted his son Lou to win at any cost. Lou told me he would never take steroids, and I told him he could develop his body without them. Of course, when I found out that he was using, I went to his father and said, "Do you know that Louie's taking steroids? Do you know they could end up killing him?" And you know what his father said? "It's not important whether Lou lives or dies. It's important that he wins." And I said, "Matty, you're a sick father." On that note, I'll end part 2 and continue with part 3, which analyses more of the big names in 70s bodybuilding that preceded Pumping Iron. I realise there's a plethora of these somewhat tedious golden era PED speculation videos, and I've done my best to serve due diligence separating speculation from the source material. But as always, these kinds of analysis involve wading through very muddy waters and should be treated as entertainment and not definitive verified fact. Please support my work with a comment or super like, as it really helps my efforts to bring you more content. Thanks for watching.